Welcome back, History with Talbot here, this time bringing you another response video. In this one, I will be responding to history buffs' criticism of Apocalypto, which is a film from 2006 about the Mayan civilization, which was directed by Mel Gibson. I hope you enjoyed this video, in which I'll be having a bit of criticism about what History Buff says. But despite my criticism, I really enjoyed History Buff's video, and this isn't meant to discredit him in any way. And I strongly advise that you go and watch the video because it's a good video. He makes a lot of really good points, and it's quite a funny one as well. So I would recommend you watch it, and I'll be putting a link in the description so that you can find it easily.
They head back to their village. A village which looks way too primitive for a Mayan settlement. I mean, seriously, it's smack bang in the middle of the jungle. The land has not been cultivated whatsoever. It's just a bunch of flimsy stick huts surrounded by trees. Why haven't they been cleared? If this is a Mayan village, then where are their crops of corn and maize? Why aren't they growing squash and...
Alright, so I think here it's fairly obvious that this isn't a Mayan settlement. If you have a look at Mayan settlements, the houses don't look like that at all. And I can see the point he's making, but then I don't know why he's making it, because he's basically saying it's clearly not a Mayan settlement, and he's completely right. It's not a Mayan settlement, but what's the issue here? These people aren't Mayan, so why should that be an issue? Now, if you have a look at the Mayan settlements of this time, they're more built in limestone, especially this era, which I think is representing the post-classical rather than the classical Mayan era, but I'll get into that a bit later. But it's completely the wrong lifestyle for the Mayans as well. They're clearly hunter-gatherers because they kill a tapir and they take it back. If you look at the village layout as well, it's more a communal setting. It's more, the central fireplace and lots of different huts surrounding it. Now, that's very much the sign of a more hunter-gatherer rather than the Mayans, who were, they were more metropolitan society, especially at this point in time.
Maybe they're like a primitive non-Mayan tribe or something like that. Yeah, maybe that excuse could have worked if we didn't see them speaking bloody Mayan. Later in the movie, we see them talking to other Mayans without any problem.
Now, on this point, I'm going to actually disagree with history buffs, because I think that they would be able to understand each other. The reason being that all the Mayan languages which are spoken in the Yucatan Peninsula, where this film is set, and which you can see on the map in green, they all had a common ancestor called Proto-Mayan, and the same way that a Dutchman might be able to understand quite a lot of German because they both came from the same root, or a Spaniard or someone from Portugal might be able to understand quite a lot of the other's language because they both came from Latin. Because of this reason, I think that the people in the film would be able to understand each other as well, because everyone in this region spoke a different dialect, even rather than a different language of Mayan, which all had this common ancestor. So for that reason, I don't think History Buff's argument that they wouldn't be able to understand each other would hold up, and it especially wouldn't hold up if he was saying they were Mayan before and criticizing them for historical inaccuracy. Now, I definitely think that Jaguar Paw and his tribe are not Mayans, or perhaps that they are descendants of people who used to be Mayans, in the classical period, but then in the Maya collapse that they've reverted to this different lifestyle. But then I think that they would, especially if they lived in the Yucatan region, which pretty much all evidence points to them being there, that they would be able to understand each other due to this common ancestor of Mayan.
Actually, whilst we're on the subject of the Mayan language, I will admit that I do appreciate that all the actors in this movie are speaking Yucatec Maya. It's a great way to engage the audience with this period in history. However, I also believe it's a double-edged sword, since it adds a false layer of credibility by having an authentic native language in your movie.
As someone coming from a family who traditionally spoke an endangered minority language, I can honestly say that it's a very good and refreshing thing to see whole feature-length films which millions of people around the world would see in that said language. So I honestly can't praise them enough for making Apocalypto in Yucatec Mayan.
The only thing I feel is missing is that none of them seem to be carrying shields. So the Mayan warriors attack the village without any clear motive other than to collect the villagers for human sacrifices. The only question I have is, why bother with this lot? I mean, surely you want to go after other warriors or highborn nobles from a rival kingdom if you wanted your sacrifices to have that much more meaning to the gods. But that's not the case here. Everyone in the village, minus the children, are taken as captives, and they all head back.
Could the fact that they don't have shields indicate that they are a raiding party? Because on a trip like this, it doesn't seem likely that they would particularly want a long fight. Now, the attack at dawn suggests they are more slavers. Now, the typical slaver kind of thing is you don't want to get into a real fight with the people you're trying to enslave because, one, you could get killed, and two, you're killing your cargo. You're killing the slaves, and obviously you can't make a dead body, you can't sacrifice a dead body to the gods in this case, and you can't make a dead body work. So what they're trying to do is get slaves and get them alive. So it doesn't really make sense to get them into a fight. And because of this, it probably makes sense that they leave their shields at home if they had them, because this is just a raiding party. They've gone out for a few days from their capital, from their city, to get these slaves. So it makes sense that they're more of a raiding party rather than a fighting party, which would suggest that they would leave their shields at home so that they don't over encumber themselves. Now, the second point I wanted to make here is that at this time, the Mayans in the post-classical era were very much influenced by other groups like the Toltecs and the Aztecs, which I'm sure you'll all have heard of before. And these groups were a lot more violent than the classic Maya. He goes on later in the video to go on about how the scale of the sacrifices is unrealistic, and the type of sacrifice as well. But I think myself and history buffs disagree on the time period which this is set in, because I rather think this is the case of an individual Mayan city-state's collapse in the post-classical era, rather than the Maya collapse which occurred at the end of the classical Maya era. But anyway, moving on. With that fact, he also points out, why would they take just any old, Amazonian tribesman or whatever, instead of princes from neighboring cities? And it seems like a good point, but it's again, if you understand the time and you understand that they're looking at the Aztecs and the Toltecs for inspiration, then you see a shift in culture. And the Aztecs and the Toltecs pretty much just went and invaded, and they invaded not just to get slaves and to get sacrificial, people to sacrifice on the altar to the gods, but they also invaded to keep the land. Now, in Peoples of the Americas, it's written that Maya people took prisoners of war from their raids on non-Mayan villages and sacrificed these people. And he also goes on to write that the people they took were of the lowest socioeconomic level. So the people they sacrificed weren't princes, they weren't kings, that kind of thing. They were usually children or slaves or prisoners of war, which is again this whole idea of it's better to get someone alive to take someone captive than to kill them. Alright guys, I really hope you enjoyed this quick response video to History Buff's video about Apocalypto, and that you've maybe learned a thing or two about the Mayans or about the Mesoamerica and South America that you didn't know before. Let me know what you thought about my criticism. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with History Buffs? Or do you have your own ideas on the topic? I'd really love to hear them. Share them with me down in the comment section below. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs down if you didn't enjoy it. And subscribe if you want to see more. Also, if you'd like, you can follow me on Twitter at HistoryWHilbert, and you can slide into my DMs there, or tweet me at HistoryWHilbert. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll be joining you again soon with some historical content. Alright guys, take it easy.